What is up? Today is August 19th, 2021. My name is Champagne, and I'm here to give you a master solo queue guide to Pokemon Unite. First off, just a little bit about me. I solo queued mostly to Masters after about 110 matches. I peaked at around the 1600 rank mark, and I've played around 300 ranked games this season or so. I'm making this tier list the day after the Blissey patch, so a lot of these are just going to be as well-informed opinions as I can for now. I'll make another one next week once we have a little bit more data on Blissey and see how she goes. Quickly, I just want to lay out the criteria for how I'm ranking these Pokemon. I want to tell you all what makes them good or makes them bad in my eyes. Anytime I am evaluating a character or a Pokemon, I ask myself three important but simple questions. Question number one, how difficult is the Pokemon to play? What is their skill floor and their skill ceiling? Basically, skill floor refers to the idea of how easy the character is to master or how easy the character is to learn. Skill ceiling is once you've learned the character, how strong is it at the very highest level in the most capable of hands? Question number two, what is the thing that they do best? Basically, what do they do better than any other Pokemon in the game? If they have that, what is the niche that they fill? Um, just what makes them unique? Why would you pick this character? What is the reason? And question number three, when are they the most powerful in relation to other Pokemon? This question is a little bit more nuanced. Um, it definitely involves looking at the meta and kind of seeing who counters what and when. The current meta is everyone is rotating to Dreadnought as soon as it spawns at around 7 minutes. So my tier list is going to weight heavily around people who power spike at 7 minutes for Dreadnought and Pokemon that can also team fight very well for Zapdos, because we all know that is the most important thing. With all that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into it. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do things a little bit differently than most. I'm going to put all of my S tier Pokemon straight into the S tier because a lot of my other decisions about why Pokemon are ranked so high or so low are based on um, countering the S tier Pokemon or losing to them pretty hard. So I will go ahead and throw up all of my S tier Pokemon in the order that I think they are. And I'll start with evaluating them. So Lucario. I cannot believe that this character has dodged Nerf bats time and time again. It is insane to me that this character is playing the way it is in its current state. It is an absolute monster. He's good at every level of the game. I would say the only bad part about this character is probably his Unite move. I will say it's a fairly difficult character. I think Lucario takes a decent amount of skill. I think it's a pretty high skill ceiling. Um, the thing they do best is simply just in pretty much anything that the all-arounders do. Lucario has some of the best mobility in the game. Lucario has some of the best engage in the game. He secures neutral objectives like wild Pokemon or Dreadnought or Rotom or Zapdos very well. He has insane burst. He has really good CC. He does just about everything. He's kind of what I think all of the all-arounders are supposed to do. Um, and if, like I said before, the character is powerful at all states of the game. I think it's probably Lucario is probably at their weakest in the late stage of the game. Generally, Pokemon that don't evolve tend to be weaker later, from what I can tell. I think that's an intentional balance decision. If you have three stages of evolution, you're probably going to be stronger later in the game. Since Lucario doesn't evolve at all, or evolve at all rather, I would say Lucario is probably weakest at the very end of the game, but even then, Lucario is an absolute monster. They're so hard to lock down, they're so hard to deal with. Solid S tier, I think probably the best character in the game. Next we have Greninja. Greninja and Cinderace are almost the exact same Pokemon, it's just that Greninja has a little bit more flexibility. What I mean by that is they are traditional attack damage carries. They'll attack you from range with their auto attacks, and a lot of their damage is going to come from that. Where Cinderace likes to fight front to back, Greninja can fight front to back, as in hitting the tanks first, hitting whatever's closest to them, whatever's right in front of them. Greninja also has the ability to stealth into backlines and assassinate carries pretty quickly and pretty easily, and also get out. Um, I would say Greninja is probably the highest skill cap character in the game. If you are incredibly skilled with Greninja, you will go incredibly far. I also think Greninja is fairly hard to play, so I think it'll take a while for someone to master Greninja, but if you do, you can single-handedly win solo queue games. Greninja's the Pokemon that I got my very first pentakill on, so it didn't take me too long to learn the character, but at the same time, I still feel like I have a long way to go. Um, the thing it does best by far is its flexibility and how it can team fight. Not only can it assassinate Pokemon by smoke screening into the back, getting off an empowered auto, but it can, like I said before, it can also fight front to back. It can shred tanks. It can throw shurikens at Snorlax all day. One of the very special things that Greninja can do is he gets the resets when his surf cooldown resets anytime he eliminates something with it, whether it be an enemy Pokemon or a wild Pokemon. One of the things I like to do is I like to quote unquote prep the bees. So I'll get some of the bees really low, and when the enemy tries to walk in close to last hit the bees, I'll surf through the bees to get the reset, hit the enemy, and then I'll surf back through my enemy, basically crossing them up, ending up in front of them and behind them. Um, there's a lot of times you can get some really crazy damage doing stuff like that, and it's a pretty wild burst. Again, kind of like Lucario, I think Greninja's Unite move is fairly bad. I don't think it's very powerful. A lot of the time I end up using the Unite move for mobility, not only jumping towards the giant water shuriken, but also getting the speed boost after. But other than that, I think Greninja's a very solid second best Pokemon in the game, maybe the best, depending on the meta. Even after the bug fix for Ninetails, I still consider this probably the best quote unquote mage attacker. I also think she kind of fills a very weird niche in between support attacker, but I think she's probably the best caster damage dealer. She doesn't necessarily do the most damage of the casters, but she has the flexibility. I think the character is pretty straightforward, pretty easy to play. The only playstyle, the two moves that I use on her are the Aurora Veil and the Dazzling Gleam. The CC from Dazzling Gleam is very consistent and super easy, and the Aurora Veil gives your entire team damage reduction. And honestly, the boosted attacks while Ninetales is in Aurora Veil is absolutely insane, just consistent and straight damage. So I guess in that sense, she is kind of a ranged attacker like Cinderace and Greninja, but the Dazzling Gleam gives her a little bit more kick. Um, like I said, the thing she does best is that she's a very strong damage support hybrid. She fills this niche where she can do a ton of damage at range, has a ton of CC, and is a very safe Pokemon. Her Unite move is very good at controlling team fights, but if you're in like a duel of some sort, you could be in a bit of trouble activating it and trying to get out alive. Most people take Buddy Barrier on her now anyways, so she ends up being safe, especially with the Focus Band and Muscle Band as well. But I consider her probably the third most complete character in the game. Um, I think one of the biggest reasons she slides into S tier so easily is that she power spikes at level 4. Um, Vulpix is a decent character, but at level 4, Ninetales goes out of her mind. And she gets level 4, and a lot of the time she gets level 6, her Aurora Veil, as Dreadnought spawning or before Dreadnought, making her probably the strongest level 6 Pokemon in the game, I would guess. I the only character rather that I would probably say has a chance at being stronger is Snorlax, and that's because I think Snorlax is just so tanky early. I think Snorlax has a ton of CC early. He's super tanky, he's super durable, and later in the game he has the best CC in the game. Even after the nerfs to block and heavy slam, and the heavy slam nerfs were actually nothing. I think I read somewhere the damage nerfs for heavy slam was 5%. So again, absolutely nothing. It's not a big deal at all. He just has the best long range engage in the game with heavy slam. Uh, I think mechanically Snorlax is very easy to play. All you do is really just drop heavy slam on a large group of people or the carry, and you activate block and you walk them into a wall. So mechanically, he's not super difficult. I think the difficulty in Snorlax comes with knowing when to engage. In a game like Pokemon Unite, where you don't really have any way to communicate to your solo queue teammates, you can't really tell them that you're going in super easily. Of course, you can use the ping system, but I've found that it's not very effective and it's kind of clunky and hard to use. So a lot of Snorlax or maining Snorlax or playing him in solo queue and finding success is going to be being able to know when to engage or when to peel back and protect your teammates without having any sort of communication with them. I think that's going to be the difficult with him, but if you can do that, which um, I think people are finally starting to understand the flow of team fights and stuff like that. If you can do that and you have a good Snorlax on your team, you'll absolutely dominate. Um, Again, his CC is probably his kit probably has the best CC in the game. His Unite move is also very strong. Even after the nerf, only healing 70% of his maximum health, he is an absolute monster, and he's so hard to finish off. I think Snorlax is probably his most strongest around the second Dreadnought. Once he gets Heavy Slam and Block, he really needs to get kitted out to make sure he's good. The upgraded versions of those moves are obviously better, but while other Pokemon are running around still not even leveled at second Dreadnought or fully evolved to like 9 and 10ish or so, Snorlax is running around bullying them. Absolutely. Solid S tier, and shout out to the jungle variant of Snorlax, which I'm pretty sure is going to get pretty popular. I think Flail Yawn is going to be absolutely insane, especially with the addition of Blissey. I think high health targets are going to become a lot more popular with how much healing Blissey does. And I truly expect Jungle Snorlax to be like maybe a niche S tier, but it will absolutely roll people. And finally in the S tier, Cinderace. Again, solidly S tier. A lot of the same things with Greninja, just less flexibility. Cinderace probably has the best front-to-back team fight in the game. He absolutely melts tanks with his 3-hit passive. He's incredibly safe with Feint. I think Feint is legitimately the single best move in the game that's not a Unite move. You become invulnerable and you can dodge any attack in the game. And his Blaze Kick gives you an attack speed steroid that also stuns people. So anyone trying to chase you down, you have the ability to stun them for a short period of time and get a ton of attack speed once it's upgraded. Um, the bug fix to Cinderace's ability to run faster with his Empowered Auto queued up is a fairly large nerf, I would say. But overall, Cinderace has an incredible Unite move. He does incredible damage. Yeah, his Unite move is the best move in the game for stealing neutral objectives, probably. It does a ton of damage. You can throw it from really safe, from really far away. And I don't think Cinderace really has a weak point in the game. Uh, Obviously, with all of the auto attack based characters that scale off attack speed and their own attack stat, they're going to be the best at the end of the game. If you've ever run into a level 15 Cinderace, you know that he just absolutely rolls you. He melts you. He's a wild character, and him and Greninja going into the jungle and kind of locking down that jungle meta is probably why so many different all-arounders are struggling to find their way into the game. Now that we have the S tier out of the way, I'll just start going through them. Venusaur. I think Venusaur is solidly in C tier. So I think Venusaur is a fairly difficult Pokemon to play. The Venusaur has two different playstyles. So you can run the Leaf Storm Giga Drain playstyle, which makes you like a melee range battle type mage, sustain mage. So you can heal a bunch and you can stay in the fights and you can deal a bunch of damage. You can kind of just be disruptive. I think that playstyle is fairly easy to play, but I don't think it's very rewarding. I don't think it's very fun personally, and I don't think it really does what they were trying to do, making them a super tanky character, like a vamp type character. The other playstyle is the Sludge Bomb Solar Beam style. It's a much more long range poke style. I think this is the more difficult playstyle, and I also think it is a little bit better. That being said, I don't think poke is super strong in solo queue. It's really hard to coordinate with, so you'll kind of just be standing off on your own, just launching solar beams at people from super far away, which is nice. And it's really good if your opponent doesn't have any sustain, if they don't have anyone who can heal them up. Um, it, Venusaur is excellent at stealing objectives or stealing last hits on things. But overall, they don't really have they're not really the best at anything. If you want a long range sniper, I think Gardevoir is just better. I think Cramorant's better as well. Not necessarily as long range, but I think Gardevoir is just a better version of Venusaur. So I don't really see a niche carved out for this character. Um, Venusaur's probably the most powerful when it's fully evolved into Venusaur. I think Bulbasaur and Ivysaur are pretty bad. They don't feel very strong. Ivysaur much stronger than Bulbasaur because of Solar Beam, but they just take a little bit too long to get to max level, and generally you would mitigate that by sending them into the jungle. But there's absolutely no reason that Venusaur should ever go into the jungle over Cinderace or Greninja, or even Lucario. Just point blank period. The character sits in a solid C tier. They need to buff the damage of this character a little bit more. They don't have any mobility. They don't really do anything special. And by the time they come online, other characters have passed them by a long shot. I think Gengar also sits in C tier. Gengar was an absolute menace early in the game. They were just unstoppable. The damage was insane on the Sludge Bomb Hex combo. But since then, people have kind of figured out the game. They've kind of figured out how to ramp up more quickly. And Gengar falls into a very similar category as a lot of other Pokemon in this game that just kind of take too long to get to their strongest point. Getting Gengar to level 10 kind of takes a lot. And why would you put Gengar in the jungle when you could just put Cinderace or Greninja in the jungle and they will level to their last evolution at 7? Uh, if you can get the Gengar rolling, and in certain team comps, Gengar does very well, but I think it just takes too long a lot of the time. Um, I haven't played a ton of Gengar myself, if I'm being honest, so I don't exactly know the difficulty. I think the Sludge Bomb Hex is still the best combo of moves, and I don't find it super difficult. You kind of just hit the Sludge Bomb and then you hex until you run out of hexes and then you run away. Generally speaking, the opponent's already dead. Um, Gengar's an insane assassin once you get to higher levels, but I think it takes way too long to get there. And in solo queue, you really want to be power spiking at Dreadnought. You really want to be power spiking at Zapdos. Um, and if you're not power spiking at Dreadnought, then you need to be doing something very special, or else you don't really fit very well into the game. Mr. Mime. I think Mr. Mime is really underrated. One thing Mr. Mime has going for them is I think that while they struggle against Ninetails, because Ninetails just outputs more damage at a more consistent rate, I think Mr. Mime is sneaky good against Snorlax. I haven't run much of the Psychic build, but I have been running a decent amount of the Barrier on Mr. Mime. And Barrier can deny Snorlax engages pretty easily. If you drop your barrier while a Snorlax is trying to heavy slam into your team, the Snorlax just gets walled off. Very similar to how the Snorlax gets blocked or uses their own block. Uh, so for that reason, I think Mr. Mime is much stronger than people think. I also think Mr. Mime has a lot of utility with Guard Swap if you decide to go that route. Guard Swap you can use on an ally to speed them up and yourself up. It heals the ally. You can use it on the enemy. It'll do damage over time to the enemy. It'll still speed you up. It also makes landing your confusion stuns much more easy. Anyone who's guard swapped is instantly stunned and they're not pushed back, so you don't have to go chasing them. Uh, Overall, I think Mr. Mime is pretty strong at Dreadnought as well. I think they probably peak then. They can. There's a lot of walls in towards the Dreadnought area, so if you can kind of funnel them into a tight corridor and just start hitting multiple people with your confusion stun, they are going to have a really bad time. Um, I think the character is decently hard to play, however. Lots of skill shots, lots of aiming. Um, I wouldn't recommend running Mime, not that you can tell, but you're going to have a much worse time running Mime into team comps that have high mobility. I'm thinking like Zeraora with multiple teleports, Talonflame engaging from 10,000 miles away. Even a character like Lucario who can reset its extreme speed or bone rush out, you're going to have a hard time hitting your confusion. If you hit all of them, your Mime is just going to absolutely slap people up. But overall, I think Mime really struggles against high mobility. One thing that Mime does have going for them, however, is that they have the tied with Charizard for the fastest charging, passively charging ultimate or Unite move in the game. I think Mr. Mime's Unite move, while not lasting very long, is really strong. I think it's really good at running in and disrupting Dreadnought takes. If anyone's in melee range of the Dreadnought or Zapdos, the Mr. Mime can run in and stun them up and make sure that they can't do anything. So again, I think Mr. Mime will probably sit in B tier. They just don't have too much. They don't have too much they can do against most of the S tiers, except for maybe Snorlax. Excuse me. Gardevoir will just barely eke their way into A tier, I think. This character is fairly difficult to play. Again, a lot of skill shots, and they're pretty unforgiving. Basically, Gardevoir would be referred to as a combo mage in other games. You hit one of your abilities that links all of your abilities together. They're decently long cooldowns, and if you miss one of the abilities, a lot of your damage goes missing. But if you hit everything, your target probably dies. Uh, I will say with the Psychic buff, I think the character becomes a lot easier to play. I think Psychic was pretty underrated. I have a good number of Gardevoir games under my belt, and I'd been using Psychic with Psyshock for a while. Psyshock is the one that hits 3 times. Uh, and chasing people down or kiting people with the slow on Psychic makes it really strong. With the buff to reducing some special defense, I think it's probably the go-to pick with Psyshock. Moonblast is really strong, and the upgraded version is great. It gives you a little bit of distance between your enemy and gives you a shield. I think Moonblast is invaluable in certain team comps and in certain situations. But overall, I think Psychic is going to be a lot better. I think, again, especially with Psyshock. I don't run Future Sight. I think Future Sight's a little memey, but it does feel good to just hit like 3 Future Sights in a row and have the cooldown completely reset. Um, I think Gardevoir's probably the best long-range mage in the game. Uh, I've had countless times of just kind of walking up with a Psyshock uh, into the Dreadnought fight and just dropping the Psyshock on Dreadnought, having it hit 3 times and taking the steal. It's kind of hard to account for her damage, and she does a lot of it. She does have probably the best team fighting Unite move in the game, although it takes forever to get to Gardevoir, and it takes forever to get to the Unite move. Very clearly, Gardevoir peaks at 10. If you're playing Gardevoir, you're probably playing for late game. If you want to be lane dominant, if you want to win in the early game, if you are dead set on securing Dreadnoughts, then Gardevoir is not the character you want to play. Gardevoir Ralts and Curly are just really bad. They'll be a little bit better with the bug fix to their empowered auto attack and the psychic buff, but if you want to be dominant in lane and compete at Dreadnoughts, um, I would not pick Gardevoir. You're picking Gardevoir to win the Zapdos fight. You're getting to level 10. You're probably using 2 ults, maybe 3 if you're really crazy at farming and farming your ult. But again, you're using 2 ults, one right when you get it, and then another one at the very last Zapdos fight. You're getting everyone in it, and you're blowing them all up. She's insane late game, probably some of the highest consistent damage late game, but she has very distinct and clear weaknesses. Absol. I think Absol kind of falls into the C tier as well. And Absol, man, the speedster roll is, I think the speedster roll is struggling right now. But to get more into Absol, they are an absolute noob stomper. And by noob stomper, I mean they will just run over people who uh, don't exactly know how to play the lane phase properly. That being said, I don't consider myself a noob, and I've had Absols absolutely ruin my life. The extra crit damage is absolutely insane, and the character will one-shot a ton of different characters, practically one-shot a ton of different characters earlier in the game. The issue with Absol comes when you get much later into the game or when you're facing tanky characters. Uh, Basically, if you are losing with Absol, like you're not getting Dreadnoughts, you're going to have a really bad time. Absol needs to constantly be over-leveled for their opponent for them to be constantly doing damage. Also, your opponent having a Dreadnought shield certainly doesn't help Absol. In the late game, they don't team fight very well, and generally their damage falls off a cliff. They just don't do a lot. I say the character's fairly decent to play. I've run a couple Absol games, and it's pretty straightforward. You jump on them, you auto attack them, you reset, you kill them. The ult makes you invulnerable, which is always valuable, but what Absol really does best is killing people within the first like 7 levels. I will say if you can snowball on Absol, if you can really get your opponents behind super early, you will have the ability to just freely take Dreadnoughts. Because you can deny a bunch of experience and levels to characters playing with Absol. Next we'll go to Garchomp. I think Garchomp's buffs almost put them into A tier, but we're going to stick in B for now. Uh, I think Garchomp is really hard to play early because they're so bad. I think Gible and Gabite are two of the worst Pokemon in the game for sure. But again, getting to level 10, Garchomp is basically the melee equivalent to Gardevoir. They're an absolute monster in the late game. They team fight super well. The buffs to Garchomp's early game make them a lot stronger, I think. And I think the movement speed buff could sneakily run this character into A tier. For what it's worth, I think in organized play, like I think if you run a Blissey with Garchomp, this character can be S tier. I think if you take Garchomp into the jungle and you let him get to 10 super quickly and you have a Blissey just run around, give them movement speed, give them empowered autos, and basically give them a ton of healing or make them invulnerable to CC, Garchomp could be an absolute monster. Uh, but again, for now I'll go B tier. I want to see more Garchomp. I've seen a little bit. I wasn't super impressed, but I think this character could be S tier. Crustle. I'm going to drop Crustle into B tier. I think the buffs to Crustle, to Stealth Rock and to Rock Tomb, don't really do much for it. I think you still run X's or Shell Smash. Um, Crustle levels at level 4, but I don't think that's when they peak. I think Crustle is the strongest later in the game when they have a bunch of extra stats and they have the ability to just kind of distract the opponent. Crustle is the character that's going to run around in your opponent's side of the field and they're going to chase them and they're going to waste time while you're just doing whatever you want. Uh, it's a bit of a memey character at times, but I mean when you X-scissor someone into a wall 3 times and you see it crit and their health just evaporates, it feels really good. I think Crustle is a decent uh, tank character, but I think the tanks could use some help. Hopefully this big boy Blastoise over here can help. Talonflame, again, another speedster that kind of just struggles to carve their own niche. I will say Talonflame is probably better than Absol, and Talonflame definitely peaks a lot earlier. Um, Talonflame also has the great niche of engaging from a million miles away. I think Fly is also very good at stealing objectives. I've seen a couple people running Talonflame where they fly in and they activate Fluffy Tail over the neutral objective, like Zapdos or Dreadnought, and they drop down and do massive damage. Talonflame probably has a spot if Greninja or Cinderace are ever nerfed, but as long as those two characters exist, all of the speedsters that are generally supposed to be in the jungle are just going to suffer because I mean, would you rather have a level 7 Talonflame or a level 7 Cinderace? And I think the answer is just Cinderace and Greninja every time. Charizard. This is the single most underrated character in the game. Right here. Charizard is the single most underrated Pokemon in the game, and it's not even close. Charizard's issue is the same with any of the 3 evolution Pokemon that aren't Greninja and Cinderace. They're pretty bad until they get to Charizard. But Charizard has a very special niche that they do something better than anyone else. They have the ability to single out an opponent like no one else can and ruin their time. You get Charizard, his Unite move, and he shuts down Greninja and Cinderace pretty easily. Greninja and Cinderace come into the fight, you use your Unite move with Charizard, you zone them out of the fight, you pick them up, you drop them on the ground with Seismic Toss, and the if you're running Energy Amplifier, there's a good chance that you've killed them if you're able to chase them down. You can also run the Bodyguard Charizard build, where you basically do the same thing. Say the Gengar is chasing your Cinderace, and you see that your Cinderace has been hit with the Sludge Bomb. You immediately just use your ultimate, do a ton of damage to the Gengar, lift him up, give your Cinderace a chance to run away, and you move on. Charizard also has one of the fastest charging Unite moves in the game. I run the Fire Blast Fire Punch build, so you Fire Blast just kind of sort of behind them and you Fire Punch them into the Fire Blast, slowing them a ton, doing a bunch of extra damage. Charizard does more damage than people think as well. Again, I think this character is just so underrated just based on who's in the meta. There will be a Cinderace or Greninja in every single one of your games climbing. Almost every single one. And Charizard does amazing at dealing with them. I also think with the Blissey being introduced, any all-arounder is going to be a lot better just because they're going to be able to be sustained by a character like that. Again, Charizard's super underrated. You heard it here first. This character's nuts. Play them. Zeraora. Zeraora just kind of falls into the speedsters tier list, sadly. Um, Zeraora is probably a little bit better than Talonflame because they're a little bit more versatile. Uh, I think their ability to dash and then teleport back to their dash is super strong. Zeraora is clearly super strong early. They can do a ton of burst damage. I think Zeraora's ultimate's also really good. The AoE damage it does at times can be insane. It can also be invulnerable, and it's kind of predictable. But overall, again, speedsters don't have a spot as long as Greninja and Cinderace can walk into the jungle comfortably. I really think that those two are bullying out the speedsters as a whole. I'd like to see some honestly heavier nerfs to Greninja and Cinderace, but until then, I think the speedster role kind of just struggles. I think Eldegoss is somewhere in the mid B tier. Uh, Even after the nerfs, I don't think there's anything wrong with Eldegoss. Eldegoss and Blissey are going to be compared to each other a lot, but I would just like to make the quick distinction that Blissey is going to be more of a single target healer. Blissey is going to be a funnel character. She's going to lock onto one teammate, she's going to heal them up a ton, and she's going to make sure that that one teammate can do whatever they want for the rest of the game. Eldegoss is a much more team fighting support. She applies shields to the whole team, she applies healing to the whole team. Uh, Again, for Blissey, you're going to want to have like a duo partner or just have a Cinderace on your team and follow them around. With Eldegoss, you really become super powerful when you're team fighting. You are just an absolute menace. Cramorant, A tier. I think Cramorant is probably the top of the A tier, really close to S tier. Cramorant falls into a similar role as Ninetails and Gardevoir, but I think Cramorant CC makes them absolutely insane. They don't have as much consistent damage as Ninetails, and quite frankly, I think Cramorant is just a very difficult character to play. If you miss anything, you're gonna do like almost no damage. But if you hit everything, you do some of the most damage in the game. I don't think Cramorant is really weak at any point in the game as well. Maybe towards the end of the game, but man, as long as you have your Unite move, you run Buddy Barrier, you run Energy Amplifier, you walk into a brush and Unite, and at any neutral objective, as long as the enemy can't destroy you or get you out of it, you're going to absolutely melt them. I consistently get top damage as Cramorant, and I'm pretty sure it's just because I hit solid Unite moves and the entire team melts and dies. Blastoise, we're going to put him down here because we don't know yet. I think Pikachu sadly falls into the C tier. Um, Maybe a little bit above Absol, but by not quite. Pikachu's early game is incredibly strong, just absolutely insane. The character, you almost don't want to lose Electroweb because it's just point click CC and it does wild damage. The character just kind of doesn't do anything after level like 9. Um, I do see Pikachu's consistently getting the most damage in my games, but frankly, they just don't do a lot after that. They don't have a ton of utility, they don't have a ton of CC. If you want a ranged attacker, you take Cramorant, you take Gardevoir, you take Cinderace, you take Ninetales. There's just a lot of characters that do what Pikachu does better. Um, yeah, sadly, I just don't think Pikachu really has a spot. Clefable will also fall into that spot. Wigglytuff. I think Wigglytuff is probably probably above Charizard, but just barely. Wigglytuff's stats, the defense and special defense, are pretty comparable to Snorlax, making her easily the tankiest support in the game. Well, maybe not easily because I haven't really looked at Blissey's stats, and Blissey does have a ton of health. But you can use any of Wigglytuff's moves, and the moveset is going to be good. I think Rollout has some real cheeky plays that you can do, and it makes you super tanky. Generally, I'd run Sing and Dazzling Gleam. I think those are much more consistent, and I think Wigglytuff's Unite move is insane. Um, I think what Wigglytuff really has going for her is I believe she has the earliest Unite move in the game at level 8, and well, you probably won't have that for first Dreadnought. You'll have it pretty soon after, and if you get the Dreadnought, you probably end up having it, and which basically means she's going to be the strongest character in the game at that point. She's incredibly tanky, like I said, and she has really good, easy to land CC. I don't think the character's super complicated to play unless you're doing some Galaxy Blade rollout stuff. As long as you're not trying to, as long as you're not trying to do too much with the character, you're going to just get consistent results. I think maining Wigglytuff and just rolling through solo queue, you're going to win a lot more than you lose. SlowBro. I think SlowBro probably falls down to C tier as well. With the nerfs to Surf, I think this character gets a lot worse. Even if it's just a small nerf, uh, being able to act out of Surf, being unable to act while being surfed, was really the only thing that this character had going for it. Telekinesis is okay, but it's kind of hard to land. Amnesia is almost an unusable ability. Um, their Unite move is very strong at locking down single targets. Say like the Greninja is trying to assassinate your team, or maybe there's a really fed Gengar or Talonflame. You can just Unite move them and protect one of your carries, but there are just so many other things that you can do. Like it's just not super effective. The character isn't super difficult to play by any means, but with that, you kind of are punished by how easy the character is to play with not having a ton of impact. I will say the character is a great defender at literally defending goals. It's really hard to score a goal with Surf going on, Telekinesis going on, just getting a bunch of auto attacks down onto people. But the character isn't especially tanky, and the character just isn't especially that good. Solidly in C. Hopefully, honestly, I really want all of the defenders to get buffs except for Snorlax, and we really need Blastoise because I think that would add another solid defender. And finally, Blissey. This one's really hard because I think Blissey is legitimately probably an S tier Pokemon in competitive 5v5. Like in a competitive environment where everyone is in some sort of voice comms and everyone knows what they're doing, this character easily sits in S tier, and it might be the best character in the game. There's a high chance that this character enables a playstyle. It enables a funnel playstyle where you put all of your resources into a single character and everyone just supports them. It would be like a double support funnel where you run something like Eldegoss, Blissey, um, to double support one of the carries of Cinderace and Greninja. You'd probably run Ninetails as well, and maybe you'd even run without a defender. You'd run like a Lucario, Ninetails, and maybe Cinderace or Greninja. So again, I think Blissey could legitimately be the best character in the game in a competitive 5v5 environment. The issue comes that this tier list is for solo queue. Remember that. So Blissey's kit will only be as good as the people you are healing. You can take a set of moves on Blissey to where you do zero damage. Like you don't have the ability to do damage to your opponents with abilities. Basically completely removing your agency from the game, from being able to eliminate opponents. I think that's a pretty dangerous playstyle, and I think the lower you go in ELO, the worse it will be. Basically, as long as you can be sure that you're going to have a hyper carry, so a Greninja or a Cinderace or a Lucario or even a Garchomp type on your team, as long as you can ensure that one of those characters will be on your team and that they are good enough to pilot their character, Blissey will be very strong and be able to enable. I think that's why I'm going to have to drop Blissey into B tier because I don't know if you'll be able to do that sort of coordination with zero communication. Uh, a lot of people are going to think this is super controversial or have like very varying opinions on this, but in a solo queue, a purely solo queue environment where you're not speaking to anyone, Blissey is going to be B tier. Even in a duo queue environment, I think Blissey is easily A tier. If you pick Blissey and you get one of your friends to pick any of these hyper carries, you're going to absolutely stomp. You're going to give them invulnerability to CC, you're going to give them a ton of healing. Her Unite move is very good at protecting people because she takes on some of the damage that her ally is taking. She also does a ton of CC there. Um, but I think for solo queue purposes, Blissey's probably going to sit in B tier, just above Eldegoss. I think they're very similar characters in that Eldegoss also needs. Well, actually, no. I think Eldegoss is better than Blissey in a purely solo queue environment because Eldegoss can apply shields and she can actually do damage and she can influence the map a little bit better. I totally forgot about Machamp. I didn't see him, so I'll do that one real quick. I think Machamp is another A tier character. Excuse me. Most of the all-arounders got a lot better with the introduction of Blissey. Machamp is another character that you could just follow around with Blissey and absolutely slam. I think Machamp probably has the best single target CC in the game with submission. Having a Machamp run up to you and slam you backwards into the enemy team is terrifying. I think their ult's pretty hard to land, and I do think it's kind of hard to actually get to Machamp. I think Machop and Machoke kind of struggle. But I've run into a couple Machop or Machamp Wigglytuff lanes and just been absolutely rolled out of my mind. You don't do enough damage to kill either of them, and they have infinite CC and blow you up. I think Machamp and Garchomp are basically the exact same in terms of this. Machamp's a little bit comes online a little bit earlier and is a little bit better, but Garchomp, excuse me, gosh, definitely has a higher ceiling. But okay, I think that's the end of my tier list. Again, this is purely solo queue and it's purely my own opinion. Um, if you if you think that I did something wrong, go ahead and comment and tell me. Uh, Also, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be making a ton of solo queue content. I think the next thing I'm going to do is probably a comprehensive jungle guide and then a comprehensive laning guide, and then I want to go into particular guides for particular characters. So if you have any content that you want to see, go ahead and comment down below. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.